Hello, everybody out there, private pay therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health professionals. I'm here today to talk about how you can take full pay clients who need insurance when you don't take insurance, right? How often does it happen? You're on a consult call, you're on an intake call with somebody, you got a great rapport going. They know you don't take insurance, but yet maybe they still came to the call secretly hoping you could work something out. And a lot of times, historically, right, those calls end with, I'm so sorry, I can't be of service to you. I'd love to help you. We're a great fit. It's just, it just doesn't work. But what's really exciting is there are actually ways out there that you can get paid your full pay private pay rate while still allowing your clients to use their insurance. And I'm here today with Sanjana Sathya, who is the co-founder of Thrizer, which is a company right here in San Francisco Bay Area that helps you do exactly that. So I'm going to actually, I'm really excited to have you here. We've talked a lot over the past months, and I've gotten to know your platform and you're a super awesome person. I'm grateful that you're here and that you've created this product for therapists. And, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you, about Thrizer, about how your platform works. But before we jump into that, I would really love to just know if you can share a little bit more about the general concept of out-of-network benefits. Because I know in my work as a therapist marketing coach, a lot of the therapists that I work with don't even realize that this is an option, which is why it's so exciting that you're here, because you can probably explain it a lot better than I can.
No, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, absolutely. So out-of-network benefits can feel nebulous, confusing, especially if you're, been accepting insurance and you want to transition into private pay. Either you haven't heard of them or you've heard of them and you don't know how to help your clients navigate through them. So that's really where Thrizer's mission comes in, to kind of simplify the whole process. But I'm happy to share a little bit more about what they are, how they could be your best friend, both as a clinician and a client. So in a nutshell, right, out-of-network benefits are benefits that exist in a client's insurance plan that can still get them reimbursed. On average, what we've seen, 70% of the therapy cost, even if you don't directly accept insurance. So, they exist in a lot of different plans, especially PPO plans. A lot of non-PPO plans also have it. And what is really neat about it is that you as a clinician can charge your full private pay rate, but then the client can get back 50 to 70%, sometimes even more, of that session cost, so that, it's not just on you to accept insurance to be accessible to them. They have other financial means to pay for therapy sessions. And so that's why I love out-of-network benefits. I use them myself. I'm a longtime therapy goer. And when I found out I had out-of-network benefits, I started getting reimbursed up to 60, 70%. And it was the best feeling, because I was able to continue sessions weekly with my out-of-network provider, who I had found a great fit with.
That's awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like it's almost getting the same amount, if not more, than you would get from the insurance panel if the therapist were still on insurance. That's great. And then I'd love to just hear a little bit about, obviously, you're co-founder of this company. What is Thrizer? And if tell me a little bit about the background, how this company came to be, whatever you'd like to share about that. I love stories. I love superhero origin stories.
No, absolutely. So, Thrizer was founded by two longtime therapy goers. That's really our inception story. We both found our fit with out-of-network providers, had to be seeing our therapist weekly and wanted to see our therapist as frequently as we could, but super bills became very difficult to navigate, right? A lot of times, I would submit super bills and never hear back. I wouldn't even know where to submit it. It would kind of go into Neverland, and I wouldn't even get a confirmation email that I sent it to the right place. And, a lot of times then, okay, I had to get on insurance calls, and the last thing I want to do is get on insurance calls. Like, it's just not, something that clients want to do, and therapists don't want to do it either. And so we really saw this as a need in the space of, what if we just let therapists focus on care, clients focus on care, and there's this other, entity or stakeholder that takes care of all the insurance stuff. And that's really where Thrizer was born, because we were able to kind of automate a lot of things, integrate with medical clearinghouses, and just make the whole process so much more efficient so that you don't have to deal with insurance. And as we said, we really would have hoped that Thrizer was there when we needed it, and so we kind of built it for ourselves. And it ended up being something that a lot of people really resonated with, and it ultimately ended up making therapy much more transparent, right? Because you get the price transparency up front, you get accessibility. We have a cool thing where clients can actually just pay a co-insurance, even though the client or the therapist gets their full rate up front, right? Which I'm happy to talk about more later. Yeah. And then 3 is no more super bills, like no more needing to navigate insurance, automatically get submitted to insurance. And we handle claims end to end. So there's really no need for the client or the clinician to get involved.
Yeah, that's great. And that's one of the things too that speaks to me so much, as in so many conversations I have with therapists, and especially from a marketing and a website and optimizing your intake process and all of that. It's like trying to even explain the concept of a super bill to someone. Like I've been working with therapists for 18 years. I still don't fully understand the concept of a super bill. It's confusing, and dealing, so many people I work with spend hours a week on calls, the therapists, with insurance carriers, trying to sort through it's all the things that you do for them. So it's like almost getting people back their time, which is really nice. And just as a client, making it easier to just start that relationship, because the last thing you want to worry about is how to file weird, confusing claims to hopefully maybe get some of your money back. So thank you, and thank you for creating this. And I thought it'd be fun if we did sort of like a mock intake call, because I would love to personally, I don't know anyone watching this, if you're with me, I would like to see this in action. Like, what does it actually look like out of so if you're up for it, we can do a mock intake call where you pretend to be the therapist and I'm the client, and we've had a nice little conversation. Oh my gosh, this is going to be the best therapy ever. I'm really excited to get started, but I did want to talk to you real fast about my insurance.
Yeah. So I am actually out of network, which means that I don't accept insurance. My private pay rate is $200 a session.
Okay, I don't really think I can pay that, like maybe for one session, but if any kind of long-term relationship, it's not going to work. Do you do sliding scale or anything like that?
Yeah, but I actually also have another avenue that we can take a look at. So in your insurance plan, you might have these things called out-of-network benefits, which basically means that even if I don't accept insurance, insurance will still reimburse you a large portion of our therapy cost. So if you want, I can actually quickly check your benefits using Thrizer, which is the platform that I use for out-of-network billing. If you can just provide me your information, I can quickly check if you have these out-of-network benefits.
Yeah, sure. So would you just literally need me to tell you what my insurance number or who my plan?
Yeah.
What do you need from me to make this happen?
So here we go. So here's basically what I need from you. My private pay rate, like I said, is $200. I would be seeing you for individual psychotherapy. So really all I need from you is your name, your first name, last name, date of birth, insurance company, and your member ID. So those should, hopefully, if you have all of that handy.
Well, here, let me go ahead and get my card out. My name is Gregory Goodman. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I believe that's all the information that you need.
Yeah, pretty much. Just so that we don't actually run it, and I don't want to, violate PHI here. But I actually have something pulled up here, so you'll see this is basically what I can let you know. So assume this is Gregory Goodman, right?
My apologies. My name is Jasper Taylor here, and yes, and this is my plan information.
Yeah, exactly.
I forgot my name. I went off script and I forgot the name I was supposed to use.
No, you're totally good. So yeah, here's your out-of-network benefits. So exciting news is you do have out-of-network benefits. So what this means is that you have a deductible which is essentially an amount that you would have to meet before you are eligible for reimbursements from insurance. So that would basically be $2,000. You would meet that in 10 sessions, right? So about 10 sessions, you would be able to start being eligible for reimbursements. And so the cool thing, though, is that you've apparently already met your deductible. So the amount remaining on deductible tells you, okay, like how much is remaining on your deductible. You've actually met the 2,000. If you hadn't met it, you would have met it in 10 sessions, but you've met it here. So the really cool thing is you're actually already eligible for reimbursement from insurance. The estimated reimbursement amount that we're predicting for you is $120. So that means that you no longer have to pay $200 for my sessions. You would actually only pay $80 for these sessions, right? Because you will get back $120 from insurance for our sessions. So that's really awesome. Hopefully $80 is much more manageable for you than the $200.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I don't know how to work this into my pretend Jasper personality, but the amount remaining on deductible, just as a general curiosity, is that for, and maybe it's different for different insurance carriers, is that for all services, or is that specifically a psychotherapy mental health deductible that's different than my out-of-network, out-of-pocket deductible for medical or specialist visits or anything like that?
Yeah. So there will be different buckets that these services fall into. So you'll have separate deductibles for the bucket that it falls into. So this might actually also cover physical therapy, occupational therapy, some of the other therapy services. So this might be, this will be like your therapy deductible, right? And so this is specifically your out-of-network therapy allowance, which is or deductible, which is the 2,000. But in this case, you've already met it.
Okay. So, and I'm gonna pretend for a moment that my amount remaining on deductible is still a full 2,000.
Yeah.
So this all sounds great, but what I'm understanding is for the first 10 sessions, I'm going to pay $200, your full rate per session, and then after that, I'm going to be paying $80 per session. But am I always paying $200 to you, and then the insurance company is going to give me my money back? How long does it take for my insurance company to give me my money back? Who's giving me that $120 back?
Yeah. So really good questions. The one nuance here to note is that the amount that gets applied towards the deductible is the allowed amount. So it won't necessarily be the full 200. That's why I said it's approximately 10 sessions. The reason being is that, and we can go over this in more detail, we'll have a full, how does the math work for all of this section. But insurance basically sets an allowed amount. What that means is that they will say, and you can see here, we've estimated that for this particular insurance plan, the allowed amount is $150. And it also says your co-insurance is 20%. So what that means is that insurance is only willing to reimburse 80% of that allowed amount for this particular insurance plan. And hence that's where that 120 comes from, right? And so only 120 gets applied towards the deductible each time, even if the client, or, you would have to pay 200, 120, 120, 120 would need to then add up to 2,000. So whatever, 2,000 divided by 120 is, that's how many sessions you would end up paying the clinician's full pay rate.
Okay. And is 2,000 like a relatively standard deductible? I mean, I know it probably depends on if they have the gold, the platinum, the silver, the bronze plan, or whatever that is. But is that sort of an industry average that we're looking at there of the 2,000 for deductible?
Yeah, unless we're talking about high deductible plans, which of course exist, and you'll see upwards of $10,000 and stuff like that. Typical plans are between $1,000 to $3,000 is the deductible amount. So sometimes you'll even see plans that are $750, sometimes you'll see $1,500. So I think that is probably the right range to think about.
And then, so when the refund comes, the reimbursement, $120 once the deductible is met, is that coming from the insurance plan, or is that coming from you, from Thrizer?
Yeah, so Thrizer is actually making the whole thing really simple for clients. The way it normally works, right? This is how it normally work if I, as a clinician, were to provide you with a super bill, right? So the normal process is I provide you with a super bill. I say you've come to me for, let's say you've already met your deductible, right? You've come to me for a session. I charged you $200 for that session. You submit that super bill to insurance. And then you have to wait 4 to 6 weeks for a check in the mail for that 120 that
Like an
comes to you.
actual old-fashioned paper checks coming
Yeah,
in
it's
the
old
mail.
fashioned paper checks. Insurance has not caught up at all.
This thing called
And
direct deposit. Sorry, please
yeah,
continue.
literally, right? I mean, that's already very nerve-wracking. Like, I mean, even when I was waiting for checks, like I was like, okay, what if I have the wrong address on my insurance? What if it gets lost? Then I have to go through the whole process of calling my insurance. Will they even believe me that I never received it? Right? It's just a lot of stress with paper
Or
checks. Like every step of the way, insurance just finds a way to make things really difficult. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the typical process, right? Thrizer recognizes that there are so many friction points at every step of the way. First of all, me needing to even request a super bill for my clinician, right? Then me needing to figure out where to submit it. And then I have to call insurance to follow up. Did you receive it? When can I expect this? Also, I have no idea how much in reimbursement I might expect, right? There isn't that price transparency. They're not going to send you an email saying, "Oh, we've received your claim. You're estimated to receive 120," right?
sure.
There's no communication whatsoever. But what Thrizer is aiming to do is you have this, you check benefits upfront, so you'll know exactly like we estimate you get around $120. And then from there, if you've met your deductible, you can actually just pay your co-insurance for sessions. And that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. So I, as a client, or I guess you as a client here, you would
Yes,
only pay $80. Yeah, you would only pay $80 at the time of the session. Thrizer would cover the rest of the 120 for
oh,
me as
okay.
a clinician. So I'm still getting paid $200 at the end of the week. And then Thrizer waits for 120 from insurance to pay them back.
Okay, so that's cool. So once me, Jasper, meet my deductible, I am
Yeah,
actually, it's not like I'm paying $200 every session and then waiting for Thrizer to get me back. I'm now paying my $80, the difference between the reimbursement amount and your
the clinician's rate. Yeah,
therapist
my rate.
clinician's rate to the clinician directly, and then Thrizer is paying the clinician the rest of it.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. Okay, that's really convenient for the client. Yeah. And is there anything else that you wanted to show on this? Because I'll get it back to just the two of us on the screen, unless there's anything else in this window that you think is worth sharing.
Yeah, one thing I'll note is that before we submit the first claim, the way that we're able to estimate this amount is based on an estimated allowed amount, right? So this number right here, the deductible comes directly from that client's insurance plan. Amount remaining comes directly from the plan, and co-insurance comes directly from the plan. The only one that we're kind of guesstimating is this allowed amount. And Thrizer has a bunch of just wealth of knowledge because we submit so many claims across many different insurance plans that we're able to say, hey, based on this insurance plan, we estimate that the allowed amount is 150. So that, it is an estimate. So once we get back the first claim, we'll know in actuality how much that allowed amount is. Like, insurance is notorious. They're not going to share that ahead of time with us. And it does actually vary by client. We make it very clear, even when the client receives their estimate, we ask, clinicians make it clear, hey, here's an estimate. But once we submit the first claim and get it back, we'll know in actuality what that estimated reimbursement amount is, and that won't change moving forward.
Got it. Okay, that makes total sense. So shall I remove the screen? Was there something else? No, you did it. Look at that.
Nope, that's it on that screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I of course see this because I work with a lot of mental health professionals who are private pay, higher session rates, and it is, it's, we were joking about it earlier that just there, no matter how many times I say on a contact form, like I do not take insurance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
People still book that free consult. They still reach out, and whether it's just blindness to it, or just like secretly hoping like maybe you'll make an exception for me because insert reason here. I find that so many therapists do wind up, so many exclusively private pay therapists wind up on phone calls with people who are hoping to still have that insurance kick in.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. I know. From a client's perspective, it's probably wishful thinking, or to your point. And we actually recommend people, therapists who do use Thrizer, can put on their Psychology Today, can put on their website that says, "Hey, I'm out of network, but you might have out of network benefits. I can help you verify it for you." Right. So
Sure.
there might be a client who's like, oh, shoot, they don't take my insurance, but oh, hey, what is this out of network benefits? I'm curious. I'm really like this therapist. I want to get on a free consult, call with them. Maybe I do have out of network benefits. And it's
Sure.
very easy for a clinician to check that using Thrizer's platform.
Right. And it's interesting too, because there's still that deductible, which, is just the way the industry works, no comment. But it still requires a financial investment by the client, right? It's not like, oh, we've got Thrizer and from day one I'm paying $80 a session, right? There's still, it sounds like that this is an amazing solution, and there's still this industry that you're existing in that has these requirements, and there's just no way around it. But it's still a million times better than like you're just gonna have to pay $200 for for the next insert ongoing therapy session forever.
Yeah, no, I honestly, like, that is the one thing. If I could wave my magic wand and say, hey, come on, let's actually fix something. I mean, there's so many things I want to fix, but it would really be, let's lower the deductibles, right? To your point, like, it is really disheartening when I see a client who has a $5,000 deductible or a $10,000 deductible, because on paper they have out of network benefits, but they actually don't, right? They can't ever access it, especially because deductibles reset every year.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's unfortunately just the system we exist within. I'm hoping in the future, Thrizer, we can come up with really unique solutions to help people meet their deductible too. It's definitely on our roadmap and radar. But unfortunately, yeah, it's the industry we live in.
Yeah, no, there's 100%. And of course, it's something you think about, like, I just think about all the other countries out there, and all the other stories I hear from international clients and people, just of how different the mental health world is outside of our 48 continental and 2 slightly off the continent states. And just, anyway, that's a whole other conversation that we could probably talk for hours about. Is there anything else that you'd like, that what would be the most helpful, like, aside from how Thrizer works or things like, specifically about the product, like, is there anything else that you can think of that anyone watching this, and it doesn't have to be, should know, that would be helpful to know about the world of insurance, about the world of reimbursement? Like, it's just, I get the idea from our conversation and just from the therapists I work with, that some people are like, yeah, I know all this. And if you know all this, you're probably not still watching this video right now. But for people who are newer to the world of maybe transitioning from insurance to private pay, or just don't have this background, what other things should people be thinking about, or should people know when it comes to this world?
Yeah. I think that, for someone who might be completely new to all of this, maybe that intake call was even a little too nuanced, right? Maybe people are still trying to figure out, hey, what is an allowed amount, right? What is a co-insurance? What do those terms mean? So I have a deck here. It's typically what I share with people who are new to the space. They just need something a little bit more visual and walk through of, here's how out-of-network reimbursements actually works if we just take a step back. So I'm happy to walk through that if you feel like some people might be new to that space.
My instinct is like, let's do that. If anybody's like, hey, I watched this, it's cool, I'm just ready to reach out. Just, you can reach out directly. I'm going to put contact information if you're reading this on my blog or on Facebook or on LinkedIn or whatever it is. Like, below this video somewhere, there's some reach out contact information, so you can learn more, schedule a demo, and see if Thrizer is a fit for you. And with that little call to action out of the way, like, yeah, I would love to, to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me actually share my screen again. Let me know if
Yep.
you can see this. I'm
You
gonna
get it up and running, and I'll click the little button to get it going.
okay, here we go. So do you see that?
So I do. Are
Okay,
you want to put in the slideshow? And there we go.
cool, awesome. Feel free to butt in and ask as many questions. Putting on your "I'm new to private pay" hat. Because I
Yes.
live and breathe this every day, so I might go a little too fast or whatever.
We'll see what Jasper wants to know.
Yeah, right. Cool. So, how do out of network benefits reimbursements work? So, again, like I said, I think it's important that every private paid therapist understands this because it really is thousands of dollars per year that a client can save, right? Even if a client it doesn't outrightly express that the $200 whatever the rate is expensive for them. I know when I started therapy, I eventually had to stop because maybe month 5, right? I was like, I've invested too much in this. I don't have the cash flow for it, or I don't have the money for it, right? Versus if I'd been getting reimbursements along the way, I would have continued therapy, right? So I think it's just so much money that has the client's name written on it that we should make sure that everyone's educated about this, and that's kind of my big soapbox that I like to share, and what Thrizer's mission really is. So with
Question.
that, we'll jump into it.
Quick question. As you're talking about this, right? Me, Jasper, I'm like, yeah, great. I could probably just pay my $200 forever. I got a really great job. I make tons of money.
Right.
But I'm curious, would it make sense for me to still use Thrizer with my out-of-network insurance? Because who wouldn't want an extra $120 per session in their pocket? Because my understanding is that if I'm paying you private pay and we're not going through Thrizer, it is not coming out of my deductible, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's not. You have to still submit your super bills, right? You still have to go through all of that. So the really cool thing, and we can go into more detail on how Thrizer works from a nuts and bolts perspective. At a heart, we're a payment platform. So as a clinician, if you charge your private pay client through Thrizer's payment platform, we automatically submit claims for them every time you charge them, right? So there's no need for Jasper to request super bills, submit it, right? It's just happens as soon as he goes to therapy. There's really not much further that Jasper has to do. He just needs to show up to therapy and then go home, right? And he's only paying $80 a session instead of 200. Like, why would he not do that, right? I think a lot of clients are scared away by the fact that, okay, like I might get back $120, but then I have to like submit my super bill, call insurance, and it's all this, and like for something that's not certain, why do I have to invest all that time? And I can just pay $200, right? And there's so many people that I know like that. But if it's just integrated within their workflow, right? It's easy for the clinician. It's easy for the client. Like, let's give him back 120 so he could go to more therapy, or he could go every twice a week, right? If he needs it, or something like
that. My marketing hat and bells and whistles are just like, what a great selling points, right? Like what it is, like on an intake call, what a great like added benefit of going with me or someone else. It's like, yes, I'm a private pay therapist and I charge $350 an hour. And yes, you can afford it, but if you're concerned about the long-term sustainability of that, I actually work and I have a way, blah, 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 everything we were just saying, like just that's for these, high tickets, high session rate therapists, a lot of whom are people that I work with are folks who are charging 50, 300, 350, and it's a tough sell, right? And every little thing helps to ease the financial burden of the dream client. And it's, we're not trying to say like, okay, this is part of my initial, what I'm saying, like, hey, we get to the point we're talking about money. It's like, just so you know, this is a possibility. I don't know. I feel like I just came up with the idea, so it's like a half baked idea, but it seems like a good marketing thing to explore.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. Like, I think if you think about what we're trying to do at Thrizer, it is bringing the best of in-network therapy and out-of-network therapy together, right? Clients like in-network because they just want to pay a copay. Clinicians like out-of-network because they want to charge their full rate and not have to deal with insurance, right? And that's, if you think about it, it kind of may seem too good to be true, but we truly believe this is what the future of therapy should look like. It is everyone being treated the way that they should, and paying the least amount from a client perspective, but receiving the most and what, you know, they deserve from a clinician perspective. And if we're not able to make insurance get there, then we're going to have to use things like Thrizer to make sure that we create a system that's more equitable.
Love it. Please to continue with the.
Yeah, cool. So just really quickly, what we'll cover is high level again. How is insurance different for out-of-network versus in-network therapy? How do we calculate an out-of-pocket cost for a client? What is the reimbursement amount that they receive from insurance based off of? So there are things that we covered on that benefit verification page, but allowed amount, deductible, coinsurance, and then a quick example and some resources. So again, as we covered, in-network means insurance sets the rate and clinicians can charge, right? And then a client pays a copay, clinicians wait for reimbursement from insurance. Out-of-network, clinicians will set their own rate, gives them the financial freedom that they want, but then the client's on the hook to submit their own super bill and wait for reimbursement in the typical world, right? And so that's just high level how in-network and out-of-network is different for someone who might be completely new to this space. And then if we kind of go into just step-by-step, how is a client's out-of-pocket cost calculated in out-of-network therapy? It is basically the clinician rate minus whatever the insurance company is reimbursing the client for that session, right? So in the Jasper example, what we had was the clinician rate was $200 and insurance said, hey, I'm going to cover 120 of it. So then the client cost was $80. So that's basically how the math works at a high level for what is the client cost. And we have a different example here. So if it's 200 and then the reimbursement is 150, the client's out-of-pocket cost is $50. Any questions here so far? And keep going.
Keep going. I may sneeze, so I'm putting myself on mute.
Sounds good. Cool. Yeah. So the TLDR here is that the client is responsible for the difference between clinician's rate and then the reimbursement they receive. Yeah, so we get this question a lot. What is that out-of-network reimbursement amount then? How do we actually figure it out? And so it varies by individual plans. So oftentimes we'll see very similar plans, but they could have slightly different or completely different reimbursement amounts. And that's, again, because it's a complete black box. We don't know exactly what goes into it. You know, there are different things like a clinician's licensure, geography, virtual versus in person. Like there's so many things that go into it. And it's really hard to parse it out, but it does vary by individual plans. But there are a few things that are kind of common across in terms of how you can read the benefits that you receive. And those things are a deductible, allowed amount, and a coinsurance percentage, which we'll go into a little bit more detail on the future slides. Cool. So deductible. So we talked about it in that example already. Basically, it's the amount that a client has to meet before starting to receive insurance reimbursements. We talked about how typically it's between the $1,000 and $3,000 range, unless a client has a high deductible plan. And the client will have to pay the therapist full rate for the sessions until they meet that deductible. And only the allowed amount gets applied towards that deductible. So that's what we talked about in that earlier example. Basically, that 120 is what gets applied towards the deductible, not the full $200, because that's just the limit that insurance is setting for that particular insurance plan. Allowed amount. So this is the black box. So this is basically just insurance saying, hey, we think that, it's kind of like in network, how they say a clinician should only get paid $80 or $90 or whatever, right?
It's kind of like up with these things. It's so, who are the number crunchers? Like, the value of this therapist is
right. Exactly.
Who are they anyway?
Exactly, right. It makes no sense, but unfortunately, that's also comes into play for out-of-network benefits, but they set some limit of it, right? They'll say 150 or 120 or whatever it is. But the client might actually be responsible for a portion of that allowed amount. So when you see in that example, we saw that, okay, the allowed amount was 150, right? But the client might be in charge of 20% of that 150, which actually means then that the insurance company is only reimbursing 80% of the 150. So it's not even like the actual allowed amount. It's just everyone's responsibilities combined is 150, right? And that's the allowed amount that they set. So again, complete black box. This is just data that we've gathered at Thrizer, and happy to share it, is just across different insurance plans. The average allowed amount that we've seen is 130. So again, the client might be responsible for 10%, 20%, 30% of that, just depending on their plan. But that's what insurance has set as, how much a therapy session is worth, basically. Cool.
Shocking.
Yeah, I know. And then the co-insurance percentage, again, is just how much of the allowed amount is the client responsible for. So it could be 20%, 30%, whatever it might be. And the percentage comes off of that allowed amount, not the clinician's rate. So this is where it can get a little confusing. And we'll run through an actual full example coming up soon. But a lot of times people will not realize that there's this concept of an allowed amount. And so they'll call their insurance and they'll say, hey, the only two numbers they'll get is your deductible is $2,000 and your co-insurance is 20%, right? They'll get that from their insurance call, and then they'll come back home and they'll try to do their own math and say, okay, so my therapist charges me $200. That means that I only have to pay 20% of 200, right? That's not how the math works at all, which is just the most confusing thing in the world. It basically means that you have to pay that percentage of the allowed amount, and then you have to pay the difference, right? So we'll run through the math, but it's important to kind of know how the calculations work.
But so I'm just curious from my own understanding, in-network insurance, right? You're just paying do you still have to pay the deductible with in-network insurance?
Yeah, typically there is a deductible in network as well. What we've heard and seen is that the deductible might be slightly lower than the out-of-network deductible.
So, but if I'm going to you, right, and you're in-network therapist and you accept my insurance and your rate is $200, I still, before I get reimbursed by my insurance company, I still have to meet some kind of deductible.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's not like this whole dream of insurance clients are so much easier. It's like there's still a lot of the same financial burden on the client.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, when I was new to the space, I was also kind of learning about all of this. And I also did not recognize that in-network also has a deductible. You're absolutely right. In-network will still have a deductible. And that still needs to be met, even if you're then paying a copay of $40 per session.
Sure. So I'm still just right now. I'm still coming to you. I'm still just paying the copay, and then you're the therapist. If I'm paying you $40, then as a therapist, I have to wait for the insurance company to send me the rest of the money on that paper check for the difference. But at some point after I meet my deductible, do I no longer have a copay? Do you know? Maybe this isn't even your expertise wheelhouse. I probably have a whole other somebody on here who's like the insurance expert, but really the people we're trying to get away from insurance. That's the purpose of this. So.
Yeah. So I unfortunately don't know, just based on my general knowledge. I do think there's always a copay. So I don't know. Sometimes some plans will have a maximum. So maybe after that, you are not paying a copay anymore. But I don't know what that threshold is. It might be like 100 sessions a year or something like that. But yeah, so typically high level, there will be a deductible in network and there will be a copay after that.
Sorry to give you a question there that's not in your zone. I'm with Kaiser, right? And like I was telling you before this call, I'm Kaiser. So Kaiser is their own way of doing everything. So it's like their own ecosystem. So it's a whole other world. Anyway, please continue.
Yeah. Kaiser is a whole other beast. Cool. So Yeah, so then now we have all the pieces, right? Now we know what an allowed amount is and we know what coinsurance is. So then we're able to actually calculate a reimbursement amount. So this is the amount that insurance will cover the remaining portion of the allowed amount not covered by the client's coinsurance. So in this example, right, if the allowed amount is 150 and the client coinsurance is 20, insurance would cover 80% of the 150, which is 120. And that's actually exactly what we saw in Jasper's example, right? It was based on an estimated allowed amount of 150, and he had a coinsurance of 20%. And so that means that 80% will be covered by insurance, and he will be receiving 120 per session for each time that he sees his therapist. And so if we bring all of this together, right, if we know all the pieces now, right? So it's basically, let's say in this example, we had a deductible of $1,500, allowed amount is 150, coinsurance is 20. Now we're like, okay, clinician rate's 200. How do we do the math then? The client would pay their therapist full rate of 200 for the first 10 sessions to meet their 1,500 deductible, right? Because only the 150 gets applied towards the deductible. So if we did 1,500 divided by 150, we get 10 sessions. And so then they would pay 200 for the first 10 sessions. And then after that, the client would receive 80% of the 150 allowed amount. So that's 120 per session. So essentially, the client ends up paying $80 a session, right? The 200 minus 120. And the client saved $120 per session, right? As we did in the previous example. So that's huge. You're saving 60% or 70% of the cost of therapy. And that can be really remarkable for a lot of clients who are struggling.
And a clarifying question. So this is what you're showing here. This is just how it works. Thrizer or no Thrizer. And what Thrizer does is makes it so that neither the clinician nor the client needs to deal with the insurance company.
Correct.
Right? That's
correct.
This slide here is the lay of the land of private pay, out of network insurance, reimbursement, super bill world.
Exactly. So it's just normally how does out of network billing work? Yeah.
Cool.
And where Thrizer can come in is that we can do all the math for you, right? And that's just first step. We'll do all the math for you. We'll let you know, as we saw in the previous example with Jasper, like deductible, allowed amount, coinsurance, reimbursement amount, completely for free. So you can check it for your clients. The client can check it for themselves, and we'll do all of that. So because you don't need to call your insurance to get all those numbers. We'll do the math for you. So all you really have to do is go to thrizer.com. And you can get started. And, we kind of covered the main things that Thrizer can help with. But, in this previous example, just to reiterate that, right, if the client is, their responsibility is $80, they're paying $80 at the time of the session. Thrizer covers the rest of the 120 for the clinician. And so they're made whole at the 200. And then we wait for that 120 back from reimbursement 4 or 6 weeks later. So that's how that works.
All right. Thank you. That was very, very educational for me.
Awesome.
I know that I've known some of this from articles and things. I haven't seen it put together. So just step by step, succinctly, like it makes you've given me a lot of like ahas. And again, too, a lot of marketing ideas for how this can be utilized, especially in this hybrid of, even if you're private pay and you're saying no insurance, like, yes, my rate is $300 an hour, but after 10 sessions, you're only going to be paying even $130 difference. It goes down to $170.
Right.
So it's right. And you're still getting the exact same service
Exactly.
from the therapist.
Yeah.
And it's just, right. It's like most services, you've got the upfront investment. We're going to get going. And then your price goes down. I can just see it as, obviously every clinician therapist needs to come up with a way to authentically and in a heart-led space to offer that, to not have it come across as pushy or salesy or any of these things.
Right. Yeah.
Once the right balance is struck, it seems like it would be a nice additional bonus to work with a private pay therapist,
Exactly.
So I'm very much grateful to you for your time, sharing your knowledge and for creating this product, this service to help with, improving the mental health of people who need it most, and to give both the people who need the help a pathway to get the help, and the clinicians, the therapists, the mental health professionals who have worked so hard and put in so many hours and so much effort and energy and student loan debts and all these other things to be able to actually charge what you as a therapist are worth. Like that's what's so amazing, is everybody wins in this. Is you, the therapist, you get to charge what you're worth. You'll actually be valued for the amazing service you're providing, and your dream client can get the help that they so much need to make their life better. Yeah, just a very beautiful gift to the world you're doing over there. So
yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I think you summed it up so well. That's basically why we're here. Yeah, we really, really appreciate it. I'm going to give you a promo code so that you can share it with your people. So basically they can try Thrizer for free. They'll get waived fees for the first 2,500 in charges that they do. So it's a risk-free way that they can go in, try our free benefits calculator that they receive, test it out, see if it makes sense for their practice, and then go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for a great conversation and for so much information. And yeah, thank you to everybody who watched this video. Let us know if you have any questions. We're both here to help and to serve, and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Bye.